Morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Morning.
Good morning.
You know, there's a couple reasons why I don't do these super sharp PowerPoints at the beginning of a trial and an opening statement. And number one is, mainly it's not my burden, right? And we talked about that. Number two, I don't want to give you something that can't be proved. Okay? What we saw in the PowerPoint, obviously, was a lot of speculation. So I want to talk about what can and can't be proved throughout this trial. Okay? And we can start by talking a little bit about Aranda Briones. As mentioned, she was a 15 going on 16-year-old young lady, okay, a teenager. She was into drinking alcohol, smoking marijuana, using cocaine, doing drugs, and hanging with people without any restrictions. Right? She was running around late at night, doing things that maybe she shouldn't have been doing. And some of those things might have included robbing drug dealers. Right? I think that was mentioned that throughout Snapchat and messages you're going to hear, she's talking about big whipping, riding with the G, robbing drug dealers, and making deliveries, I think. I think we can presume that those deliveries were marijuana and whatnot. And Aranda, was friends with Owen Shover. They knew each other from Moreno Valley High, occasionally hung out, occasionally skipped school, and what they do, they got high and did what teenagers do, right? Maybe it wasn't the right path, but it was the path that Aranda was on. Now, the people mentioned some kind of motive about an incident that occurred over a year prior involving a weapon, and that Aranda confided in her brother that she was afraid of Owen. And this is important because when you watch the PowerPoint, when you watch the videos, and you watch the evidence that's presented, we look at those things, and when you look at it, you don't see any sense of fear in Aranda being with Owen Shover, right? And in fact, she's Snapchatting the entire thing, right? And the people want you to believe that this incident from over a year ago, where both Aranda and Owen were expelled, led to somehow this murder that they believe occurred. But you know what you don't have is proof of that, right? There's no body. There's no weapon. There's no evidence that Aranda Briones is dead. And some of the things that we know and we're going to hear about throughout the trial and the witnesses that come forward, I want you to keep an open mind and think about what they say and then look at what's reasonable, right? And so the day of the incident, January 2019, Mr. Shover texts Aranda and asks to get together, right? And she does. She willingly gets together with Owen. We're not contesting the fact that they were in the car together. There's video of it, right? There's Snapchats that were played already showing that they were in the car together, okay? Now, the Box Springs Mountains, that was an area that Aranda frequented. She liked to go up to that area. She liked to hang out. She liked to drink. She liked to do the things that she did up there. And so Owen drove her around. Okay? You saw the path of travel, the cameras. Let me tell you a little bit about the cameras, though, what you're going to hear. The district attorney thinks they have a perfect case in regards to those cameras, but what you're going to hear is that a lot of the cameras that are citywide in Moreno Valley were not functional or operational prior to January 15th, 2019. And the day that Aranda disappeared was January 13th. That was the last day she was seen, right? And so what else do we know about that? If Owen were planning this murder that the people want you to believe, without a body, without a weapon, do you think he's going to let Aranda Snapchat pictures in the car with her? Doesn't make sense. Okay? At the end of this trial, the evidence isn't going to add up, okay? And we're going to be left with a lot of questions, okay? A lot of questions that can't be answered by the district attorney or any of the witnesses here. Okay? Now, the people provided you with a map of travel, and I think the words were something to the effect of, we have the exact location of travel by Mr. Owen Shover on that day in January, right? We all heard that. Think about the resources that went in to following that path, right? If they had the exact path to travel, you've got investigators, you've got deputies, you've got the entire sheriff's department at your win. And you go to every one of those locations, right? You search based on the geo cell phone data, right? You're going to search those areas, and they did, right? The police obviously did. This was initially taken as a missing persons case, right? I think family called it in and said, you know, Aranda liked to run around at night, but she usually comes back. That's what you're going to hear, that she usually comes back. And so they call it in, they treat it as a missing persons case, and they search, and they're looking for clues, right? But you know what? Having all of those locations didn't yield anything. It certainly didn't yield a body, any evidence that Mr. Shover actually committed the crime that we're here for, right? And the burden rests solely on the people to prove a couple of things, right? First, they have to prove that Aranda Briones is dead and was murdered, okay? And that Mr. Shover did it. And I submit to you at the end of this trial, they're not going to be able to convince you of either of those things because there just isn't proof, okay? Now, the route of travel and where Mr. Shover actually dropped off Ms. Briones, whether it was Bayside Park or down the street, we don't know. But she was dropped off. And Owen's statement was that she got out and she got into a silver car, like a four-door sedan. Okay? That is actually an important fact because we should hear that there was an incident prior involving Aranda getting into a silver four-door vehicle that was involved in a collision. You determine how relevant that is, but Owen didn't know anything about it. Okay? Look at all the facts, look at the evidence, and keep an open mind. That's what we ask, right? And look at some of the other things. The video showing this little hatchback Nissan Versa, right? And where does it go? We have video of it at an Arco gas station, you know, and I think the people put in there, it appears he's looking in the back, right? I haven't seen one in the back. This is a small hatchback vehicle, and it's their position, and they're going to want you to believe that something happened in that 20 minutes or so, maybe 30 minutes, up in the Fox Springs Mountains where Aranda liked to hang out, right? That somehow, even though I think even the people admit they don't know how or what was done, but something was done, right? That's what they believe. Now, if Owen attempted to commit the perfect or near perfect murder, this presumed blood, that's what we're going to call it now because That's what the district attorney used. It was presumed to be blood, right? We know her DNA is going to be in the car. I'm not denying that. There's video of them hanging out, doing whatever they're doing, driving around the city, okay? But there isn't a single person that's going to be able to come in and tell all of us that Aranda is dead. And some of the things we talked about initially in jury selection is, not to speculate, right? Base your decisions on the facts and the evidence presented. And look at Owen. When you look at the video and you see it throughout the trial, you're going to see more video of the vehicle up at the gas station at the Arco, and he's not acting strange or nervous or anything. In fact, there's other cars coming right by the gas pumps. If there was a body in the back of that car, does that make sense? Is that going to be a reasonable interpretation that he's taken the body from Moreno Valley up to the high desert? I mean, this is all speculation, right? There isn't going to be proof that any of this happened, okay? And that's why the government's going to try to bring in prior incidents and say that she was afraid and say all these things to get you all to believe in their theory that this crime actually occurred without the proof, okay? And so look at his demeanor. Look at his demeanor in the interviews with the police. He was interviewed on the 14th and said he dropped Aranda off at a park. Very basic. I don't know about you, but I don't like talking to the police even when I didn't do something wrong. Like if I get stopped, it's just a nervous feeling. It is what it is, He was very basic with his statement to the police, and then gives another one a couple days later. But you know what? We don't have proof. And you aren't going to be presented with that proof throughout the trial. Okay? We talked about the circumstantial evidence and things like that, and I don't think we're going to see a turtle with cat rings. But I just want you to think about everything and look at it independently. And everybody has their own thought process. Okay, look at the witnesses when they're on the stand. Listen to their demeanor. Listen to what they say. Listen to the time that's passed between when initial statements were made and statements were made recently. Okay? You have to consider all of that at the end of this trial. And I'm going to ask, and I believe that justice is going to require, that you find Owen Shover not guilty at the end of this trial. Okay? Because the people have the burden, and there is no way they're going to meet that burden. I want to talk a little bit about the car, the Nissan Versa. Now, not disputing that Owen had it on that day, January 13, 2019. Brought it back to Dad's house. He drove it because Mom lives down in Moreno Valley, so that's why he had the car. And he had plans of hanging out with Aranda that day. When he brought the car back, the police took it, searched it, released it back to him, even after allegedly finding presumptive blood, right? And that car was in Dad's possession for over a week. If there is so much blood, the district attorney is saying that's pooling, you don't think it's going to have some kind of smell throughout that week? Blood, as it sits, has a very copper-like metallic smell. The fact that tools are allegedly moved from the back of the car, I think, is going to be a smoke and mirror kind of thing, right? I think there's a lot more to why a thing or a set of tools could have been moved from the back of a car, Consider all that. But don't get caught up in little things that aren't reasonable, okay? And the people want you to think and see these text messages again. And I'm apologize for going back and forth, but Owen's looking for a strap, right? He's looking for a gun. There's going to be a few messages where he's looking for a gun, but guess what? He never got one, and they're not going to be able to prove to you that he ever found one. So what does that tell us? Why did he want a gun? Why did they want to rob drug dealers? This is where I'm saying at the end of the trial, we're going to have more questions than answers, okay? And why we talk so strongly about that burden of proof, and that it's not my burden to prove, it's the people's, okay? And so when we have those questions at the end of this trial, again, we're going to get up here and we're going to have a PowerPoint. And we'll talk about all the holes in the investigation, the searches that were done. I mean, they brought cadaver dogs out. Did they bring a cadaver dog to check the back of the Nissan Versa? Look for things like this. They brought cadaver dogs to the areas that they believe, not my words, the exact location of travel that Owen went, right? They searched. Not only did the sheriff's department search, they brought massive amounts of people to search. Massive amounts of, well, I don't want to say massive amounts of cadaver dogs. I don't know how many cadaver dogs, but drones, things like that. And you know what they found? Nothing. Now, there actually was evidence up towards Lake Arrowhead, where Owen Shover's family had a cabin. They had a big bag of marijuana. Was actually found up there with some E&J brandy. Okay. So there is potential evidence of drug dealing going on and things like that. But his family had a cabin up there. And the district attorney also mentioned that, you know, Stephen Shover's going to come in and say, you know, it's a little weird that there was shovels and a lighter fluid outside, but guess what? They searched that house too. Okay? And they located what they told you was a couple pairs of shoes that had presumptive blood on them. What does that prove, ladies and gentlemen? Does it prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that a murder occurred? It's 100% speculation to assume that something happened in the Box Springs Mountains and that Owen must have driven Aranda's dead body up through the high desert and somehow took Gary Shover and buried the body up there. You know why I say that? Because it's the proof. It's the facts. It's the lack of evidence to support that conclusion. And so I simply ask, and I'm almost done, to just keep that open mind, listen to the witnesses, see the holes, and at the end of this trial, we're going to stand up here, Ms. Kistner and I, one of us, with a PowerPoint detailing all the holes, the lack of investigation, the failure to follow up on subsequent tips and leads. We're going to hear about that during this trial because law enforcement zoned in on one person, Mr. Shover. Now, once they had made up their mind that it was Owen Shover, that's it, right? They focused on him. They said, well, his statement was deceptive, right? We don't believe he dropped her off at this mountain. So therefore, he's a liar and he's guilty, right? I mean, that's really where this goes. And some of us who have been wrongly accused are going to be offended at the end of this trial, okay? And when you look at everything, the only verdict is going to be not guilty. Thank you.